All right, so since the release of the DJI Neo, one of the things I think that everyone likes is that the price, $199, and you don't need a remote control to fly it. All you have to do is put the drone in the palm of your hand, press the button, pick which one you want to do, and the drone will automatically do the maneuvers around the subject. But in that video, I did talk about a bunch of different ways you're able to fly the drone, and the next option for you to fly the drone would be to pick up something like this, which is the remote control. And if you wanted a little bit better of a remote control, you can get the RC2, has a built-in screen, which is really nice. But the third way you're able to fly the Neo is with FPV gear. So if you wanted to have that full immersion, you would had to have picked up something like this, which is the DJI Goggles 3, as well as maybe the Motion 3 remote control, or if you wanted to pick up the actual DJI RC3. And that's the reason I'm super excited about DJI's latest product, which is the Goggles N3. And the one thing I think was pretty much slowing people down from moving stages as far as flight goes is because the goggles, which is this right here, the Goggles 3, this one came in at about $500, which means if you wanted to fly the Neo, which is only $199, and you want to have that FPV experience, you definitely had to throw down a larger investment on all this other gear. And now DJI is releasing this, which is the Goggles N3, completely new design from the Goggles 3, from the Integra, from the Goggles 2. There is a huge difference as far as size goes. They are much bigger goggles. So if you're looking at trying to pack away a compact system, that's definitely not going to happen here because these goggles are pretty big compared to the Goggles 3. However, they have simplified the use of the goggle, the user experience of the goggles, because you don't have those adjustable diopters here, which you have on all of the previous goggles. Right now, we have a large screen, a 3.5-inch screen that sits on the inside of the front of these goggles. And the great thing is you can just drop these on and you should be able to see nice and clear, and you don't have to do any adjustments like you did on the previous set. Now, when it comes down to price, like I said, these were $499. These come in at $229 USD. I know I'm just like throwing it into sport mode and cruising around with it. And if you do have the motion, all you have to do is point that little circle that's on your screen to where you want it to go, pull the trigger, and the drone will react and go right towards where that crosshairs are. Now, while these goggles are much bigger than the previous one, the one downfall with the original goggles, or the Goggles 3 and some of the other ones, is that if you do wear glasses, I wear eyeglasses, I actually have contacts on, but I do wear eyeglasses. If you do wear glasses, you're not really able to wear your glasses with these style goggles. The one thing I do like about this new setup is that once you put it on your face, the contour of my face, I will still have a gap here at the very top. But what's great is that you can actually tighten it down, of course, with the tightener here on the very back. Having the ability to tighten it up really squeezes it down, so any light leaks you have will more than likely go away. Now, jumping back to the glasses, even if you were to wear them here, and you can still wear your glasses and put these right over your glasses and they will work. That's something you cannot do with the previous goggles. The eyepiece is actually deeper set, so your glasses can sit and still have room in between your face and the actual goggles. Now, having used the Integra goggles as well as the Goggles 2, they all have that similar eye adjustment, just like the Goggles 3, which means when you place these on your face, you have to adjust the eye diopter here, and you have to space them apart. You have to do the focus. And if you're off just a little bit, you'll definitely see like blurry, edges. And having to make those fine-tune adjustments every time was pretty annoying. Yes, I know you can lock them here, but I swear every time I do lock them, I will still put them on, and then they're just off a little bit. You still have to kind of make those micro adjustments. And you have a wider field of view, so you can see the full screen. And even if you adjust your head just a little bit, you don't have that edge block like you do here on the Goggles 3. And after using these goggles for the past couple weeks, I was just really surprised that we have almost all of the features that we have here on the Goggles 3. We have that here on a much more affordable platform on the N3 goggle. Besides, of course, the live view and a couple other ones that I didn't mention, we still have things like head tracking. So if you wanted to put your goggles on and you wanted the camera and the drone to move based on where you're moving your head, you can still do that on these goggles. And also if you wanted to do things like easy acro mode, you're able to use the goggles with the Motion 3. You're able to do the flips With the Neo, you're also able to do the 180 drift. And speaking of easy acro, if you are pairing up the N3 with the Avata 2, they actually added a new feature called power loops, which you're able to do with the Avata 2 and the N3 goggles. Now when it comes down to compatibility, the Goggles N3 will work with the Neo as well as the Avata 2, and we are using the same 04 transmission that we have here on the Goggles 3. Now when it comes to video resolution, we have 1080p, 60 frames a second on both of these goggles for both of these drones. However, we have 1080p 100 frames a second if you're hooking up the N3 to the Avata 2. When it comes down to low latency, we do have 40 milliseconds on the Goggles 3 for both drones. When it comes to the Goggles N3, we have 31 milliseconds when hooked up to the Avata 2 and 58 milliseconds when hooked up to the DJI Neo. Now I did talk about size, and like I said, the size is definitely much bigger with the new N3. Now when it comes down to weight, the Goggles 3 comes in at 483 grams, and the Goggles N3 comes in at 536 grams. They came out with that battery on the back with the Integra goggles, which are super nice. That way you don't have a battery hooked up to a wire you have to stuff into your pocket. And speaking of batteries, we have a 3000 milliamp battery on the Goggles 3. We're here on the N3 goggles, the new ones, we have a 2450 milliamp battery. A little smaller battery on the N3, giving us about 2.7 hours of runtime. We're here on the Goggles 3, giving us about 3 hours. A feature that was introduced on the Goggles 3, which we do have on the N3, is the ability to use your RC motion controller, and you have an AR cursor on your menu system. That augmented reality cursor comes up when your drone is at hover mode while it's up in the air, or if you're just idle on the ground, and you can actually use your RC motion and use it kind of like a mouse, where you just have to point and you'll see a little line and an arrow come up, a little dot, and you can basically go through your menu system just by pointing your motion around the screen. But once they're on, these are super comfortable with the thicker foam, and if you did want a top strap just to relieve a little bit more pressure, there is a slot here on the top where you can put a strap. And I really like the fact you tighten them down. You can hear it tightening down, and if there are any light leaks around, they will normally go away because of the fact that you have this thick foam that will just compress onto your face. Now when it comes to frequency, we do have the dual frequency band 2.4, 5.8, and it'll automatically switch to find you the best transmission. And we do have the 2T4R antenna design for a much stronger and stable signal. Now when it comes down to max transmission distance, we do have 10 kilometers on the N3. We're here on the Goggles 3, we do have 13 kilometers. As far as bitrate, we do have a max bitrate of 60 megabits per second on both goggles when using the Avata, and the N3 has 50 megabits per second when flying with the Neo. The one feature I do like with these goggles, the same that we had here on the Goggles 3, is you are able to live view through the app. So all you have to do is plug in the USB-C port here, hook it up to the DJI Fly app, and you can actually see what the goggle sees. You can do live feed with the cable on both of these goggles. One thing that the Goggles 3 does have, you are able to live feed via a Wi-Fi signal. One advanced feature that they brought over from the Goggles 3, which I really like, is the ability to just turn defogging on. And when you switch that on in the menu system, you'll hear little fans turn on. And if you do have any fog in your goggles, those will immediately go away. Now to record all your flights through the goggles, it does support a micro SD card here at the very top, up to a 512 gig. Now my overall experience with these goggles are really positive, mainly for a couple major reasons. One, of course, much more comfortable here. Tighten them down, these things cinch onto your face. Next big thing is I really like is that the screen is pushed back further. Like I mentioned, with these other goggles, sometimes it'll be perfectly in focus. However, all the edges sometimes, if you just move just a little bit, the edges will start getting blocked. And of course, the biggest benefit, the price, 229 bucks. It makes the barrier to the FPV entry a lot more affordable. And there it is, guys, the Goggles N3. You can now enter the FPV space at a much more affordable price, 229 bucks. And not have to sacrifice much of anything, even compared to the Goggles 3. Yes, we have a little bit bigger of a design, but like I said, 229, Motion comes in at 99 bucks, and of course pair that with your $199 Neo. You can now experience that full immersive flying with this setup. And of course, if you guys want to see my full review video on both these drones, the Neo as well as the Avata 2, links will be down below in the video description. And of course, if you guys got some value from this one, a big like would be much appreciated. This is Ultra Stacio with FlytPath.com. See you guys out there with the Neo and possibly the Neo N3. Take care.